welcome to the NB Huddle YouTube channel. Today we will be talking about the New York Giants, the 27th ranked team in my preseason power rankings. Before we get into the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, as you want to be up to the minute when we drop more football related content. Now that we've gone that out of the way, let's talk about the Giants. The Giants hired head coach Joe Judge this offseason after getting rid of Pat Shurmur, who did not do anything positive for the Giants. Judge has been a special teams coach for the Patriots. I believe he was a wide receivers coach for some time. And it's going to be interesting to see how he does here. I did not like their offensive coordinator signing of Jason Garrett. I think that was a really bad signing. What did they see in Dallas that they were like, we need that guy as our offensive coordinator? He's very unoriginative, and his play calling is just bland. He doesn't call anything exciting, and that can really ruin Daniel Jones' progression into his second and probably most important year of his career. The second year is a very important year for quarterbacks, as we've seen quarterbacks make the jump in their second year, like Patrick Mahomes, Carson Wentz, and we've seen quarterbacks prove they are not good players in their second year. You can name any quarterback who was a draft bust for that example. Let's move on to the roster now. I have a quarterback room for the Giants ranking 26th. I think Daniel Jones has gotten way too much hype. I know he did have a solid rookie year, but he's still way too turnover prone. He had, 18 fumbles in 12 games? That's way too much. His pocket presence is awful. He's unaware, and he's just sitting there waiting to get the ball taken away from him. He does have some late throws, similar to like a Jameis Winston, where he just chucks it up deep last second. But he does have a good arm, which is why he throws it deep. And he's really accurate. He's explosive, and he really needs to work on more of his pocket presence. That is his biggest weakness. People say, well, a lot of rookies have turnover issues. Not to this extent. Quarterbacks do not fumble 18 times in a year like this. I don't know what Carson Wentz was doing. He fumbled a lot too. But most of the time, quarterbacks do not fumble nearly at this rate. But one thing about Daniel Jones that you can't take away from him is he is explosive. When he's on the field, you need to watch out. The Giants' offense is going to be a deep shot offense next year. They have weapons like Darius Slayton we'll get into later. That Daniel Jones, if he can just get some time in the pocket, he will hit them, and he will make sure that it's going for a big gain or even a touchdown. Behind him, they have Colt McCoy, who's more of just a backup. He's from Washington, one of the Giants' rivals in the division. Not much there. Let's move on to the running back room. I do have this running back room ranking third, but this is not because of Saquon's talent. This has nothing to do with that. He probably is the most talented running back in the league. His issue is health. Saquon Barkley has had health concerns, injury concerns throughout his career that players like Christian McCaffrey have just not had. He's a great player, probably the most talented pure running back in the league, just has had injury concerns, which just put him back a few spots for me. He is not the most patient runner, but when you're as powerful as he is, I don't think that's your biggest issue. Behind him, we have Dion Lewis, who's a really good receiving threat. They got him out of Tennessee. Behind him, they just have depth like Wayne Gallman and Jonathan Hillman. So that's why I have a running back room ranking first. Let's move on to the wide receivers and tight ends. I have this room ranking 18th, and it is a really good group. Leading the way is Darius Slayton, who I think is basically the number one wide receiver. He had a breakout rookie year. He's going into his sophomore year, and he is their best outside wide receiving threat. He's a deep threat, and he and Daniel Jones had a very nice connection last year. If they can just develop that even further, they can become a very scary dynamic duo. They have Golden Tate, who's more of that slot wide receiver for them. Then they have Sterling Shepard, who's actually a combination. He's more of a hybrid outside slot wide receiver. And he can get those deep ins, deep outs. He can get those middle of the field passes. Behind them, they have Cody Core, who's more of like a 5th, 6th wide receiver depth. They have Corey Coleman, who's been more of a mismatch problem for most of his career, but nothing more than that. Then they have David Sills as the 6th string wide receiver. He's a big body possession wide receiver. It's unlikely he's going to get much playing time here in New York. And looking at the tight ends, we have Evan Ingram, who is probably the most athletic tight end in the league. Definitely one of the most. He's shaped like a wide receiver. He can move like a wide receiver. He's built like a tight end, can move like a wide receiver. And people can't guard him. A safety can't guard him because he's too big for them. And a linebacker can't guard him because he runs like a wide receiver. If he stays healthy, he can have a really good year. I project him being a top 5 tight end if he stays healthy. Behind him, we have Levine Toilolo, who's more of a big body blocker. That's his specialty. They have Caden Smith, who they got off of waivers from San Francisco, and he's going into his sophomore year as well. And hopefully he can develop into a decent number 2 option for New York. Now let's look at the offensive line. I have this group ranking 16th, and it's a solid group. Their goal is to protect Daniel Jones, and we saw that they made a lot of moves this offseason. Let's first talk about Andrew Thomas, the rookie offensive tackle they drafted 4th overall. Many were shocked that they took him, and I was shocked as well. For me, it was Jedrick Wills. He was the number 1 offensive line prospect by far. They did take Andrew Thomas, who is more of a better run blocker than Wills, but he still needs to develop a little pass blocking wise. He is a very good athlete for an offensive lineman, but just not the best in the class in my opinion. They also have Matt Pert, who they drafted, and I believe the 3rd round. He's underrated. He has great technique, and he can probably become a starting right or left tackle in a year or 2, depending on what they do with Nate Solder. They have Solder, who's more of a veteran. He gave up, I think, a decent amount of sacks last year. We're probably going to try to move on from him after they gave him a huge deal when the Patriots didn't re-sign him. They have Will Hernandez, who was a 2nd round pick a few years ago. That was a great pick by them. Great guard for them. They have Spencer Pulley as their center. He is the weak point, the worst part of this offensive line. They also have Kevin Zeitler, and he's a really good guard. He's all-pro caliber, and they got him for Olivier Vernon. Great trade for them, and I would not be shocked if Daniel Jones really cuts down his fumbles just because he's getting so much more time in the pocket. If Jones gets like an average of 2 to 3 seconds per play, and he's able to get the ball out a little quicker, his fumbling issues are going to go away. And when throwing the ball deep, Jones is really good. So, we've talked about the offense. Let's move on to the defense. I have our inside defensive line room ranking 8th. This is a really good room. Leading the way is Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. They're more of the ends in a 3-4. Dexter Lawrence, they drafted in the 1st round last year, and the pick they got from Odell Beckham. And he has really good athleticism. He can develop into a really good player for him. He's more of a run stopper than a pass rusher for them. But if he can develop that, he'll be really good. They have Leonard Williams, who's their best pass rusher on the team. He's a nice piece. They traded a 3rd round pick, I believe, to the Jets for him. Then they re-signed him. That was a decent trade. I think he's more of a number 2 pass rusher. Then they have Dalvin Tomlinson, who's a true nose tackle, run stuffer. Great piece for them. But they have solid depth, too, rounding it out the room. B.J. Hill and Austin Johnson. B.J. Hill was a 3rd round pick a few years ago. He's good against the run, too. And Austin Johnson was a cheap free agent pickup, and his best skill is his run defense. So stopping the run is not going to be an issue for the Giants. And if we look at their pass rush, these guys are not the best pass rushers. We can see this. They have not put as much emphasis in stopping the pass as they have stopping the run. They could be a top 5 run defense unit and a bottom 5 pass rush unit. It is just that day and night. Leading the way is Lorenzo Carter. He's more of an edge outside linebacker hybrid, similar to Kyler Fackrell. And he does need to develop. He's a really good athlete, and if he's able to get like 7 to 9 sacks or so, he'll get a lot more recognition. Then they have Kyler Fackrell, who we got from the Packers. He can do a little bit of everything, jack of all trades kind of. They have Shane Zimenez. They're not going to get that much out of him. He's decent. And then they have Carter Coughlin, who's a hybrid outside linebacker. He can be a cover linebacker for you. He can rush the passer for you. He can do everything too as well, similar to Fackrell. That's about it for a pass rush group, and I have him ranking as the number 21 group, and this can go down. Like, I will be shocked if it stays at 21 at the end of the year. This can go down to like 28 or 29. It's not a great room, but I do have a little bit of hope for them. Let's look at the linebackers now. This linebacker group I have ranking 30th, and it's not that great of a room. Leading the way is Blake Martinez, who I think they're severely overpaid. They gave him a huge deal, 3 years, $30 million. He's not that great of a player. He's very overrated. He's not that great in coverage, and his best skill, I guess, is run. He's good against the run, which he's not even that great at. That was just a bad signing for them. Then they have David Mayo, who they got on a 3-year, $9 million deal, and he probably is better than Blake Martinez. He's decent in the run and solid against the pass. They might be benching Blake Martinez like by week 4 if they don't realize he is not helping their team. Then they have Ryan Conley, who's a 5th round pick. He could be starting for them by like week 8 or so. Then they have TJ Brunson, who is a 7th round pick. He has a lot of potential. Same with Tay Crowder. He was also a 7th round pick. It's a very thin linebacking room, and this is really where the weakness for the team is. Now let's look at the secondary, and let's start off with the cornerback position. I have the Giants ranking as number 20th room, and leading the way is James Bradbury, who they signed out of Carolina. They paid him a lot of money. Probably an overpay. I would not have given him that contract, but I understand. You need that number 1 corner, especially just looking at this room. Like, you feel much better having Bradbury there than if you didn't, even if you had to pay him a lot more than you would have wanted. I think he's a quality starter. I don't think he's a number 1 caliber corner, but he's a really good player, probably a high-end number 2. After him, it's not that great. We have DeAndre Baker. He's had his off-field issues. I'm not going to get into that. But he's also not that good of an athlete as well, which is not the best combination when you're extremely over-aggressive, like similar to Marcus Peters. He gets burnt a lot, and teams get a lot of chunk plays off of him. He didn't have the greatest rookie year, but hopefully he can recover from that. And him and Bradbury can be a solid 1-2 duo. Then you have Sam Beal, who was a 3rd-round supplementary pick. He has a lot of potential. Hopefully he can just get on the field and show it. They have Grant Haley, he's their number 3 slot corner. He was an undrafted free agent. I don't know how he got past all the teams in the draft, but that ended up happening. They have Corey Ballantyne. He was a 6th-round pick. He's a good athlete. Probably not going to get on the field that much. That about is it for their cornerback room. Now let's look at the safeties. I have this room ranking 18th, and it's a solid room. They have 3 solid safeties with Xavier McKinney, Jabril Peppers, and Julian Love. McKinney is more of that dime safety they're going to have. He's rangy, but not elite. He didn't have elite range that, like, a Julian Love has, but he has really good instincts. He can get to the ball, but he's not going to be able to go like sideline to sideline like Love. Jabril Peppers is more about linebacker, like safety box player. He's going to be in the box a lot. And Julian Love is more about rangy safety, center fielder. So this can be a nice safety trio, I guess, in New York. Rashawn Golden's here just for depth purposes. That wraps up the roster portion. Let's look at their schedule. It is not an easy schedule for the Giants. They have to host the Steelers week 1, who I think are a very good team. I give them a loss there. I don't think they can beat the Steelers. I don't think they'll be able to stop the Steelers' passing game with Ben Roethlisberger, even if he's not 100% of what he used to be. And the Giants just don't look like they'll have the offense that'll be able to beat the Steelers' pass rush. And they play the Bears week 2. In Chicago, I give it to the Bears. They have a good defense, and I think that can help carry them to this win. Probably going to be a defensive, like, slugfest type of a game. Then they host the 49ers. People have the 49ers having more of a down year, and even if they do, I don't think they're going to lose to New York in week 3. Then they have to go on the road to play the Rams and the Cowboys. Those aren't two places where you really want to play. I mean, the Rams are they're opening up a new stadium, so that's going to be exciting. But I give them a loss in both of those places, and it's week 6 and they're 0-5. Like, that's not a good start. I do have them beating the Redskins week 6. Then they go to Philadelphia. I gave them a loss there. Then they host the Bucs, which is a winnable game, but I just think Tom Brady can definitely lead the Bucs to a win over New York. Then they go in Washington. I'm going to have them splitting with the Redskins. Then they beat the Eagles at home, win in Cincinnati. And in this little stretch here, they can get a few more wins. From week 6 to 14, that's their main stretch where they want to win games and take advantage of it. Then they have to go on the road to play Seattle. That's probably the best home team in the league. You don't want to play there. CenturyLink Field is just not a fun place for opposing teams. They host the Cardinals, which I do think is a winnable game. Battle of the number 1 and 6 picks in last year's draft. Then they host the Browns, which I give them a win for. Then they have to go on the road to play Baltimore. I'm not giving them a win there. Baltimore is a very talented team. Then they have to host the Cowboys. I don't think the Cowboys are going to let them win that one. Cowboys will probably be playing for playoff spots or seeding, and that'll just be a way more important game for them than for New York. And with the Giants ending the season going 4-12, they could be in position to get another great player in the draft. They'd probably want to be drafting a pass rusher, as we saw that unit is not great. And they might even want to trade back, collect a few more pieces, get more draft picks, and just fill out the depth in this team. Maybe get a center for Daniel Jones, get a linebacker, get a pass rusher, and you have yourself a title, maybe not a title contender, but a playoff contending team. New York has a very special quarterback, special running back, great receiving room. Offensive line is good. Defensive line is top 10 in my opinion. Pass rush and linebackers need work. Secondary solid. They need to improve in a few areas, and once they do, and make sure they need to be careful of Daniel Jones. They can't mess that up. And if everything works out, New York might be competing for a title in a few years. So thanks for watching, and comment below what your thoughts on the Giants are.